Well, thanks for joining us here on WLTX Plus. I'm Chief Meteorologist Efren Afonte. An update on the tropics, but more specifically, Tropical Storm Gabrielle. This was a 5 o'clock update. We should be getting an update shortly as far as the intensity of the storm. But as it stands right now, Tropical Storm Gabrielle is about 700 miles, maybe a little bit less, from the northern islands of the Lesser Antilles. Winds sustained at 50, it's gusting to 65 miles an hour. Its forward motion is about 13 miles an hour to the west-northwest. And the interesting feature is that, if you notice, there is a cluster of thunderstorms, the bright colors that are popping up just to the northeast quadrant. That's the latest satellite imagery. So thunderstorms are developing in its northeast core, but that's the only area that it's showing thunderstorms. But preliminary projections show that the winds are starting to strengthen. Now, the overall scope of the storm is that over the course of the day, really didn't see that many thunderstorm activities until we got into this evening. And the projections still from the National Hurricane Center indicate that as we go through the next few days, it'll slowly intensify. By Sunday morning, winds are at 65 miles an hour, and then by Sunday evening, it gets to 75 mile an hour sustained winds. That'll bring it to a Category 1 hurricane. At that point by Sunday, it's not moving as much west-northwest, it's now making a northerly turn. As we get into Monday evening, well, winds possibly up to 100 miles an hour, that brings it to a Category 2. The cone of uncertainty does put it a little bit shifted to the east of Bermuda. But nevertheless, with a Category 2 hurricane that close, and at least the trajectory shows that it could be anywhere from 100 to 200 miles east of Bermuda, the expansion of the winds will no doubt be impacting that island. And by Tuesday night, still is a Category 1 hurricane, but quickly moving to the northeast. And at that point, it's going to be making its way towards the North Atlantic, so it's going to be bypassing the Canadian Eastern Maritime. And no doubt, by this trajectory, it's not going to be impacting anywhere along the Atlantic seaboard. The 5-day computer models are still in agreement. These models were updated about an hour ago, and all of the projections now have it at least within the cone. The one concern that we would have is that, are there any deviations of the spaghetti models that move it further to the west, which will get it closer to us, but more importantly, if any trajectories actually make a point towards the southeast Atlantic and anywhere really in the eastern seaboard. Now, the computer models generated indicating what the tropical storm winds are. Well, the tropical storm winds, there's a high probability right in the core, at least from the trajectory from the National Hurricane Center. At least it puts it at anywhere from a 30 to possibly pushing up to a 50% chance of tropical storm wind gusts of 40 miles an hour or more that would be impacting Bermuda. We do know by the National Hurricane projections that it is expected to become possibly a Category 2 hurricane with 100 mile an hour winds by Monday. At least the projections right now show that really the hurricane winds may not even get to Bermuda. But nevertheless, the impact will be the strong winds that will be impacting the Central Atlantic island. All the projections that the National Hurricane Center has put out thus far, all of them have indicated the first two well out to the west. So that was a concern that a lot of us were having. A lot of people were noticing that when these projections started coming out yesterday, they were starting to point towards the southeast. Now, a lot of the guidance models put it right along the current track. And the path of you see, it started out in the central eastern Atlantic, but was moving more north. Now it's starting to turn. There's a very broad area of high pressure parked right over the central Atlantic towards the North Atlantic. So it's now making that turn, and projections have it wrapping around it. Well, bottom line is that today, being September 18, well, we're now right in line of when we should start seeing the progression of named storms. Not so much landfall, but named storms. The interesting thing is that Ferdinand became that tropical storm back on June 23rd, or rather August 23rd. The time frame between August 23rd and now, this is the longest period in the Atlantic hurricane season of not having any named storms in the span of about 40 years. So it's very odd that the projections earlier this year, before the hurricane season started, and the mid-season forecast that came out earlier in August showed still we're going to be looking at an active hurricane season. If you remember, though, our peak is September 10. Even though we're on the other side of the peak, pretty much from late August all the way through the middle of October is when we're going to see, at least projection-wise by climatological 100-year history, that we're still going to have a lot of activity that could occur. Over 100 years, that's really where we see it. So between now and mid-October for the Atlantic, there's still going to be quite a bit of activity potential that could happen. The bottom line is that there's Gabrielle. Well, there's one other area that we've been watching, and we had two of them yesterday. One pretty much really never came to fruition. That one was right next to the Cape Verde Islands. The one that's coming off the West African coast, and you can see by the satellite imagery that there's a lot of deep colors, meaning very strong thunderstorms that are developed. It's right off the coast. If it should develop in the next 7 days somewhere in the eastern central Atlantic where Gabrielle first started to form. But it's only 20% chance, so I wouldn't give this one much stock over the next week. If this increases, then of course that's when we're going to pay a lot more attention to it. But again, the latest update, Tropical Storm Gabrielle, thunderstorms are developing very quickly to its northeast quadrant. Still a tropical storm, wind sustained at 50, gusting to 65. Pressure is down to 1,004 millibars. And that number would be important. If the numbers start dropping lower, that means intensification. At this time, there is no projection for this to intensify, at least over the next 48 hours to a hurricane. That won't be until Monday. And certainly, this is not going to be projected to impact at all the Southeast Atlantic, let alone right here in the Palmetto State. We'll continue to update Tropical Storm Gabrielle and any other activity that would gain interest, especially for us here in South Carolina. But for now, we'll keep on updating it. I'm News 19 Chief Meteorologist Efren Infante. Stay with News 19. We'll keep you advised.